The bouquet was not meant for her. It wasn't hers to hold, not on this day of her arranged destiny. It had been meant to wake Maria's heart with joy, not fall into the hands of the Mafia's unknown son. Maria's fingers brushed the intricate lace of her gown, rehearsing the new dance of a reluctant bride. Her skin carried the muted scent of gardenias, lingering from the bouquet she had relinquished minutes earlier. In the shadowed confines of the opulent hallway, Maria glanced at her reflection in the tall, gilded mirror, seeing a stranger peering back, one tethered to promises and alliances she never chose. Her father's voice echoed behind her thoughts, a mix of pride and pragmatism. For the family, he'd said, as if those 3 words could sway a lifetime's worth of desires. Maria, with her dreams of painting and whispers of freedom, stood under the weight of family ties and tradition like crumbling marble columns. She was an artwork carved by generations of expectation, her rebellion silent and internal. Pressure built at the base of her spine, an unwelcome companion in this lie dressed up as love. The mansion, every corner wrapped in silk and opulence, felt like both sanctuary and cage. Outside, the world moved on, untouched by the decisions made within its walls. Suddenly, the soft rhythm of footsteps against marbled floors drew closer. A presence shadowed her solitude, and instinctively Maria straightened, wrapping the invisible shawl of composure around her. He was unlike anyone she had imagined standing next to at the altar. Antonio da Silva, a secret whispered in dark corners and feared across mafioso tables. The man now gazing at her with eyes as sharp as obsidian and full of unknowable depths. "Nice bouquet," he remarked, his accent smooth, revealing glimpses of an upbringing filled with both wealth and whispers. Maria tried to quell the flutter of unexpected admiration through her chest. It was meant for someone else. He raised a brow, his lips curling into an amused smirk. Everything finds its way to the right hands, eventually. Their eyes locked, hers filled with uncertainty, his with the kind of confidence only men like him could wear. Maria wondered if he saw past her porcelain exterior, if he saw the cracks beneath. But Antonio remained an enigma, a master of the masked gaze. Her father had boasted of this alliance, of maintaining peace in their city through this marriage. Yet Maria couldn't ignore the tightening noose of dread at her throat. The ceremonies unfolded like a script she had no part in writing. Vows were exchanged under the grandeur of cathedral arches, the scent of incense thick and rich in the air. Eyes watched them, family eyes, enemy eyes, the world scrutinizing them as players in this grand family opera. As they left the church, the sky opened, weeping gentle tears upon them. Antonio shielded her with a silent grace, his presence both comforting and alien. Maria found herself drawing closer, despite the churn of rebellion that still glided under her silken facade. Back at her new home, the Grand da Silva estate, she felt the conspicuous absence of familiarity, of everything dear and known lost to this unyielding farce. Their nights began with silence and ended with them, a dance of strangers learning steps under a vault of moonlit indifference. Maria's resolve hardened amidst the softened pillows of privilege, planning for a future unseen yet by fate's designs. Antonio never pried, never probed the tender edges of her discomfort. Instead, he offered moments where his veil slipped, moments where vulnerability threatened to glint beneath his armor. Then came a day, mottled in grays of indecision, that shifted everything. The day Maria discovered the letter tucked discreetly beneath her belongings. A script written in narrow lines that whispered secrets of territory and power, and a plan that did not align with those discussed. Confusion stormed through her, bitter and blinding. She had been nothing but a marionette on display, but here was a thread she could pull, could unravel the tightly wound cords. Antonio's voice found her at evening, as dusk cloaked the estate in shadowy calm. "You found it." Maria turned to face him, the letter clutched tightly within her hands, trembling fingers betraying her stoic facade. "You knew." His silhouette remained still, unreadable. "I had hoped you would." It was Maria's turn to stand with unspoken words, with defiance framing her silence. Antonio stepping into the light was both a gesture of final admission and a haunting promise. "Did you ever wonder why this was arranged?" His voice, softer now, drew out the sharpness of reality. For the first time, she saw beyond her father's influence, and into a web she never noticed, a war she unknowingly danced through. Thunder curled in the distance, a harbinger of truths demanding to be seen or set ablaze. Maria felt the past washing over her, an ink-black tide drawn into the imperial sweep of night. Finally she whispered, her voice a guarded tremble against the vast quietude of the estate. "Why would you want me to find out?" Antonio's response hung in the air, a yet unanswered riddle. It sketched shadows across his features, and Maria braced herself for the unraveling tale. The wind outside rattled the windows in a tenacious tango, as if echoing the storm within her. "Let's just say, it's time you knew who you really are." Maria's breath caught, wrapped in equal parts dread and desperate curiosity as the night seemed to deepen around them. And somewhere outside, unseen but keenly felt, the world shifted, a wolf circling its pack, that rough promise of what was yet to unfold. Was that a phantom whisper behind her? The crescendos of hearts in suspense? She felt a future formed in silence and in storms, in vows spoken and broken. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice barely more than a tremor against the wind. Antonio offered no answer, only steps that resonated more truth than any words could yield. Those footsteps, inevitable and telling, vanished into the gathering dark. The hard snap of breaking glass interrupted the quiet, a staccato within the deep-shadowed hall of the De Silva Manor. Maria froze at the sound, her nerve endings tingling as if electrified, anticipation blending with trepidation. In the depths of the grand hall, the chandelier above seemed to sway minutely, casting speckled light across the polished marble floors where shards now scattered. It was a symphony of Havoca mirror to Maria's interior world, a reflection just as fractured. Antonio's silent arrival brought with it the familiar undertone of sandalwood and smoke, his presence commanding space even in stillness. He moved towards her with an effortless grace, never stepping on the glass. Was wondering when the tension would finally break. His voice, low and smooth as silk slipping through fingers, held an almost unnoticeable quiver beneath its practiced composure. Maria's eyes darted once again to the letter she now kept hidden within the fold of her gown, a talisman of secrets. "And what part of this, whatever this is, was I supposed to play?" Her voice crackled like kindling, waiting for flame. He eyed the shattered fragments on the floor, then met her gaze, softening ever so slightly. "The part you choose, Maria. Nothing was ever set in stone. A lie. Everything of her life, thus far, had been etched in granite, her spirit chiseled into a facade of propriety and duty. Yet here she stood, hands trembling between clenched fists and open acceptance. "Duty is more than a word," she said, the weight of familial obligation pressing down on every syllable. "But duty is not synonymous with fate," he countered, footsteps brushing through the darkness, coming to a halt before her. His gaze was an invitation as much as it was a challenge. Inside this cavernous room, accented by the filtered aroma of aged wood and cigar smoke, Maria felt minute and overwhelmed specter in layers of satin and lace, envy of the outside cavalcade of freedom she could imagine gliding past the estate gates. The pressure within these grand walls shifted like the sands upon a deserted expanse. Eyes that once scrutinized her every move just beyond vision belonged to figures darkened with power, now gathered within or around their territories. Her own father's stern directives now dissected through daily dispatches and hushed exchanges she was never meant to overhear. This was a kingdom built on whispered deals and loyalty paid in blood. Yet here she witnessed fractures, vulnerabilities that even the most fortified alliances could not keep at bay. Unsteady, she walked toward the lone window of the hall, casting her gaze out into the dim promise of the night beyond, envisioning a world not yet constrained by the plans of men. Her thoughts spun amidst the night's somber hues, the silvery moonlight bending through cracked glass. "It doesn't have to be this way." Antonio broke the silence, the layered meaning of his words both a balm and a bind. That was when she discerned the voice of her father etched into the pervasive silence. His presence felt even in absence, binding her like an archaic chain just beneath her skin. She blinked rapidly, dispelling the ghost of his influence, confronting instead the vibrant slate river of Antonio's irises watching her. She challenged, "What would you have me believe then, Antonio? That I hold the cards after all this? No, he parried coolly, allowing a rare flicker of genuine amusement to curl his lips. But perhaps that you could change the game. His simple yet profound declaration left the air humming with possibilities she dared not dream. The unfolding tableau thickened with tension and intrigue. Each day blended into the next, filled with Antonio's enigmatic dances around definitive answers. Around fragile castle walls he seemed to see through, as easily as she might read an artist's intentions on a fresh canvas. Every encounter led them down paths of mutual revelation, yet each path looped into another conflict of loyalty and learned obligation. The pressure, humiliation, the scrutiny, it grew monstrous, a many-headed beast demanding satisfaction. Within the family's ranks, murmurs spun webs about schemes more daring than the last, each transaction hushed as alliances expanded with the rustle of nocturnal deals. As obstacles piled, Antonio's outer calm came under deeper challenge too. Maria caught him at times beneath the full press of shadows upon his brow, whispers of unrest entwining his usually impassive demeanor, a barely concealed war of ideologies. Still, his provocations were cryptic, like notes locked within unsung melodies. A power play embroidered into mafioso code. One neither fully ventured or confessed his was a role of deliberate speculation and masterful forecasting. But Maria sensed a keystone held tight within her grasp, fitting too neatly in the narrative that draped her seemingly destined existence. She returned again to Antonio, this time laden by both certainty and question. Now the glint of metal caught her eye, a polished silver picture frame capturing the sun's final rays, a poignantly familiar face beaming from behind its glass. Swift understanding flooded her. There she was again, that unfamiliar woman, the image of her own mother, rendered beautifully immortal in the frame's embrace. Yet her azure mystery offered Maria a semblance of truth unspoken, but felt deeply with every beat of her heart. Antonio revealed his hidden ace at last, lifting her mother's portrait from its ease. There is more to us, to this, he explained honestly for the first time. Our families are tied tighter than you knew. Circling revelations, intertwined with half-heard whispers and exaggerated tales, merged into one complex and more painful than she had allowed her heart to dare comprehend. With resolve centered beneath deep breaths, Maria assumed her new framework, understanding that salvation lay within the walk she must claim inside this saga of duty and deception, cloaked in honor. Outwardly controlled, her hand traced the imprint of her lineage through textures worn by time, lending her steady resilience. Amidst Antonio's steady gaze rested a reflection of that unfathomable vow he ferreted quietly within. It morphed from a burdensome enigma into revelation, stalwart and immutable. The night eclipsed fully, spilling its secrets before them both. Outside, the air chilled, a harbinger wind finding entrance through slender crevices and lustrous drapery. And in that fragile serenity came the singular illumination. A future yet unshaped, a past entwined with tendrils she couldn't dismiss. The exclusive gasp of discovery, as ancient and evocative as a turn of whispered history. In the enduring peace and quiet resolve, Maria spoke with tangible authority, newfound within the firmament of forgiveness and keen moral clarity. I suppose, she whispered softly against the coiled hush, knowing full well the power now held within her grasp. Peace is just as negotiable as war. Antonio's silent nod spoke volumes, acknowledging the shift and newfound agency within Maria's core. Trapped now, yet harbored precious freedom within the conscious aftermath. What would she do once granted her freedom? Once knowing the gossamer connection weaving them closer in bloodlines and history, would it bind her to Antonio or free her to forge an autonomous future? The clock chimed through the mansion, a sonic call framing the day into midnight, as she realized that the entirety of her journey had only just unfurled. Would she dare to frame their truths anew, to explore a world built together with unfathomable challenges yet to conquer? Maria cast a final look shared with Antonio, a kaleidoscope of elegance in conflict with shadows built upon secrets unwrapped. There remained yet an infinite translation of what lay worn betwixt silence and words. Where does that leave us then? She pondered softly, decisively. But the night would hold on to the ensuing mystery, and clarity matured patiently amid its dark embrace, as only darkness can, and it grinned back knowingly. And deep within that knowing, lingering firmly, sat the beginning of their crescendo, a haunting offering of a future uncertain. It left a silhouette of possibility, shadowed and crested within the murmur of lingering ambitions amongst their unresolved present, thrumming inquisitively in the gentle temporal space before dawn. In the silence that followed, a sound echoed, distinct against the stillness, a door softly closing, leaving only queries unnamed behind its seal. Thunderous applause erupted, drowning undercurrents of lingering tension, as the grand mahogany doors of the dining room flung open. Maria's heart thudded like a deer hearing footsteps in the woods. The tantalizing scent of rich marinara mingled with the air and aroma, as indulgent as the grandeur of the event yet to unfold. Dressed in glistening silk, Maria appeared unassuming, a mere player, not the author of her own saga. A striking contrast painted her visage, innocence marked with splashes of defiant determination. Her eyes, however, belied a depth that was anything but ordinary. Yet, for many, she remained just the dutiful bride of the De Silva heir. Whispered conversations tugged at her senses like a symphony. Mosaic of power exchanges, sudden intakes of breath, and the rustle of bare-bones secrets beneath the brook of laughter. The illustrious assembly partook in the performative grandeur of a factional dinner. It was an apex of power noodling amid the tempestuous sea of organized crime. But then, at the apex of contrived gaiety, Senior De Silva fixed her with a scrutinizing gaze. Her face flushed under the heat of feigned scrutiny, her palms turning clammy. A quiet challenge loomed large in the air. They relished watching the puppet dance in check. Caught between savory bites and slippery politicking, Maria felt humiliated, a wretched wheelsman on a ship she neither captained nor charted. The weight of her father's burdens pressed down like a vice. From across the room, Antonio's watchful eyes, a guardian of unspoken compacts, held a tacit promise. A reminder, perhaps, that she was more than just familial chess pieces assembling on a grand board crafted long before her birth. In that familiar ambiguity nestled an ironclad certainty. A lesson taught to her by Antonio's tangible yet intangible presence, all encapsulated within a glance. She risked a furtive look at the head of the table. "Maria, dear, your thoughts on tonight's little arrangement?" queried Don Marcello, Alberto de Silva's unyielding brother, with a cocky ease as he tapped a platinum-clad ring against a teardrop chandelier twinkling overhead. Her thumping pulse masked the impending pressure boiling to overflow. The facade threatened to rupture at the seams. Only the evening's dessert, a cascade of chocolate mountains adorned with gold-dusted raspberries, held court as the dining room spectacle subsided into compartmentalized whisperings. Immersed in a dance of delicate breath control, seating and seating placements exchanged futures, and buried pasts embroiled within every loaded glance. Under the cloak of festive opulence, Maria found her grasp tightening around the tail end of hope, wrapped graciously in worn, callous truths. Maria excused herself. Pilfering a moment's quiet from the world was her skill, her unseen ally amid chaos rolling beneath the surface. Her resolve guided her past marble columns and sentinels adorned in gold leaf, past relics of a glory that both trapped and maintained her lineage. There, in the terrace's moonlit embrace, she held vantage to a past scarred by ruthless ambitions. The fountain trickled its waters at a quiet anthem of simple beauty, and she drew strength from its sound. Stars glimmered in symphonic secrecy above. "You make little sense, pacing under night's shroud," mused Antonio's voice, almost swallowed by the calming bravado of constellations. She breathed deeply, erratic rhythms falling into confirmation. "This charade, they believe power shifts like ocean tides," Maria pondered aloud, her voice mingling with the rustle of leaves. "Unyielding cycles maintained by frail male hands. They hold peace as close as peril." Antonio approached, flourishing confidence interwoven with his palpable uncertainty. His shadow merged seamlessly into hers. "I see more than volatile bonds," he admitted. "Fragility they name trust." In that intimacy of awakening, Maria unearthed the critical unveiling, a delicate vulnerability manifesting. Secrets were weapons of those untouched by their inconsequence. Now lay at her disposal something hidden dormant, strands of dexterity woven within her very DNA since birth. Certainly her father's underestimation was her greatest weapon. "Why tell me all this?" she questioned, eyes locked on his. There was no longer space for shadows nor doubts. "You've grown suspicious," Antonio replied, sincerity coating his whispered confession. "One day you will harness such suspicions with the might they desire." The tightrope narrowed followed its firm line along moral resurgence, her axis bearing weight against tight scripts before her ancestors. All now flooded in the grace she wielded like an heirloom blade. Their silhouettes faded into a living chiaroscuro and eternal dance of hidden motives. As Maria inhaled this new promise of emancipation, the gravity of clarity enveloped her like a symphonic crescendo, keen to tie dual destinies. "Maybe then," Maria countered, near musing as the stars played part of a silken diving sphere overhead, "even orchestrated chaos buys its freedom." This revelation held profound as another potential eternity unfolded on a night turbulent with unspoken crescendos. A telephone rang inside, a dissonant echo slicing through, recalling responsibility from visions of budding liberation. Antonio glanced back, momentarily torn between what must be and what lies beyond a future's pledged fate. "Trust me," he spoke, a barely disguised plea, unbidden. The finale seemed elusive, dichotomy-ridden stitch through the rich tapestry of themes entwined by power and destiny. The house fell silent, steeped within its intrigue. Somewhere behind, a car engine revved a distinct parasympathetic note, its vibration stirring Maria's suspended thoughts before ascendancy. Sometimes Antonio now cast an inquisitive line back towards her. "The game demands its queen." Maria's eyes glittered, freshly torn between risk and regal benevolence. Even moonlit gardens sometimes house their shadows. A gust brushed against them, shuffling branches near, like drawn blades. A move meant to ripple across the estate. She stepped. "Yes," Maria whispered, "in checkmate." For within that day enveloped a kindling, stormed nothingness, before her heart trailed down a gap unresolved. The limousine came to a sudden stop, jolting Maria slightly forward. Her heart skipped a beat as her eyes widened, the velvet of the seat plush against her bare arms. She deciphered the scene outside, the sharp glare of headlights refracted through the drizzle, speckling the windows like daggers breaking through the darkness. The driver's nervous cough from the front seat was not lost on her. The air inside chilled, and the authority resting in the shadows outside grew undeniable. In these realms of influence, distilling the very essence of unpredictable narratives, lay the greatest game concealed beneath layers of reputation. Through the window, she caught a glimpse of Antonio whispering something to the driver before making his way back. His expression was masked with careful concern and enigma, wrapped in authority. Maria straightened cautiously, feeling the cool, etched leather beneath her fingers as they danced across the seat stitching. Momentary grounding ritual, subtle yet profound. Her pulse played its familiar staccato, syncing with the slow thump of rain against the car roof. Even as she followed the contour of life's prescribed path, every inch bound by an unseen tether she could not untwist, she felt the door to possibility widening ever so slightly. Her chess pieces were set on this tranquil board. As the door opened, the scent of pine and fertile earth greeted her, wrapped within the night's embrace. Antonio extended his hand, a woven link in their tentative alliance, a silent invitation, as if unraveling the relationships deemed immutable by family creed. Anxiety unfolded its wings inside her ribcage as she stepped out, silhouetted against a stormy canvas, layered within shadows backlit by moonlight. The maneuvers they embarked upon danced on the knife's edge of power and peril. It was not long before they entered the grand ballroom, swollen with people cobbled from influence and whispered rage. It was here where men held ornate goblets like talismans, and women shrouded truth in laughter, that Maria felt her skin under scrutiny's crawl. Conversation gravitated toward her, the bride still learning when to hone silence into power, and she recalibrated her poise within this elaborate arrangement. A spiral etched along the rim of conversation. She walked as if in a waking dream, through an ornate environment that existed in elemental defiance of humility. The room was a vibrant core of influence and vanity. There, Maria was to be an artist and delicately laying brushstrokes on a canvas she was only beginning to comprehend. Antonio's gaze swept across the expanse, making a momentary connection with hers, a signal magnified from whispers of memory past, how their intended roles now shifted from actors to authors. She let his silent acknowledgement bolster her inner resolve. "Maria, your insights, invaluable as always," declared Don Luca, a domineering presence whose voice filled the opulent space like poured molasses. Her response was measured, veiled behind the light of silk whispers, an approach she'd mastered, evolved, and born with elegance. Yes, well-being thrives through harmony and art often lost in pursuit of status, Maria intoned, enveloping her words within subtle dalliance. At the fringes of regal eavesdropping, a Dana former rival now woven into and yet opposing the sphere of calculated loyalties, one who relished turbulence that underscored rebellion, caught her eye. His smirk held a challenge hankered to ignite. The recognition within his gaze struck like carefully threaded bait. It was amidst this quiet acknowledgement that furthered her resolve, that search for the obscured path tethering secrets to survival. Forcefully, Antonio paced towards her, cutting through overlapping dialogues like a seasoned disruptor. His steps provided solace, stirring the languor of long-forgotten hope into resonant action. The gunshot reverberated through the thick air, a harsh punctuation against the soft symphony of distant music. The unexpected sounds sliced through conversations, laughter and whispered alliances, leaving the ballroom suspended in a symphonic silence, punctuated by muted gasps of disbelief. For a moment, time fractured into frozen fragments. Maria caught the crystalline sight of Antonio's face shifting from composed assurance to immediate concern, a silent war waged in his gaze. The mask of collected poise he wore slipped for a fleeting heartbeat, enough to betray the secrets they both guarded. Maria's heart raced, a riot of nerves buzzing through her veins as she scanned the room. The opulent grandeur of the gathering unfurled before her with the haze of bewilderment. Faces turned, eyes aghast, all pulled towards the source of turmoil. Amidst the clamor of shock, Maria felt a pull of purpose settle in her spirit. Her slender fingers, cool against her palm, enclosed the compact weight of her necklace, family heirloom, a talisman, its significance woven into the legacy she begrudgingly embraced. Her father, bold and immovable like granite, had been the architect of her path. Yet it was here, amidst silk gowns and crystal chandeliers, where Maria had found her voice, however tremulous at first, a voice that grew steadier with each challenge faced in silence. The room around her, gilded in wealth and power, throbbed with the low hum of desperate certainty, each figure recalibrating in the wake of disrupted tranquility, eyes flicking to doors, windows, to exits that promised release. Amid this maelstrom, Maria advanced a vision in sapphire silk, grace enveloped in courage, as she moved with intent through the puzzling landscape of suspicion and fear. Eyes still fixed, Maria perceived the rising shuffle of bodies, voices lowering into cautious murmurs. An orchestra of anxiety orchestrating the room's atmosphere as masters of subterfuge scoped the scene. Paced footsteps approached, Antonio's presence, his silhouette shifting with commanding authority by her side. The connection they harbored a bridge between realms of light and shadow. Responsibility and liberation felt electric. "Not the welcome any of us expected," he murmured. A peculiar calm wrapped in stark reality. His fingers brushed her arm, a grounding gesture amidst chaos. Maria nodded, the pendant around her neck providing an anchor. Its coolness a blunt reminder of weightier battles waged through eras by those who wore it before her. She locked eyes with him, understanding passing silently between them. A recognition that their story carved itself beyond the present disturbance, within back channels fortified by trust and the ache of unvoiced truths. Smoldering beneath the conscious outer of protocol and poise were lessons of the clandestine, legends inherent within the bloodlines they bore, unspoken tales residing in the collective marrow of Mafia legacy. It was upon this understanding, this silent contract diversified under shadowed perspective, that the evening began to realign. The orchestrations of propriety gradually resumed, albeit cloaked with suspicion, delicately veiled in practiced laughter. Yet the night's unshakable disruption had left a mark, if subtle. Maria detected its presence within herself, a swirl of determination intertwined with the knowledge she had unearthed amidst Antonio's meticulous tutoring. So many players in an inextricable dance. Yet Maria embraced her role, her actions now woven tighter into the very fabric of her destiny. Her mind, emboldened by fresh clarity, echoed the possibilities inhaled as destiny unfurled its furtive paths. With bodies again engaged in rhythmic revelry, Maria sensed Antonio's covert attention from nearby. His assurance in her provided quiet resonance, a connection muted but palpably alive. Their relationship, born of pragmatism and fragile agreements, had evolved into something akin to symbiosis, each depending on the other to navigate the treacherous waters of their shared world. As night deepened, Maria's thoughts spiraled like autumn leaves on the wind, descending through layers of mistruth and woven narratives. Overhead, the crystal chandeliers glittered cold in their umbra, their brilliance casting fractal shadows that danced like specters across the polished floor, a reminder of the dual world they navigated. Maria, pausing to take stock, listened as the voices of the ballroom crescendoed and then faded away, her heart attuned to Antonio's quiet footfall behind her. "Strange how quickly assurance becomes uncertainty, isn't it?" he murmured softly, his voice barely a breath, threads of confidence wrapping around each word. It was in this shared solitude under the cloak of societal expectations that Maria began to reformulate her understanding of loyalty, its mercurial boundaries charted anew under a burgeoning clarity. As the clock's mournful chime announced the night's deepening hours, they became shadows studying the fabric of realms graced by both elegance and malice. Her insight, once obscured by naivete, now brimmed with the intuition harnessed from intuition's grasp, painting the contours of a future Maria delicately envisioned. But in the final stirrings of Eve's tapestry came an omen unboldened a hand, at first glance unpretentious, obscured by guests and wine. The air drew taut as the silhouette's gesture breached perception's dawn, uncovering emerging revelations beneath darkened veils. Maria, breath whispering down a plumb line of vigilance, glimpsed familiarity nested amid enigma, a recurring cycle writ into conscious movement, shrinking from seamless shadow. Deepened was the dialogue uncommitted, waiting as it teetered upon invisible precipice like a stillborn tremor. Unfolding within that charged silence, her lips murmured a subtle decree, her heartbeat an echo to destiny's ominous requiem. Tonight, nothing is as it seems. The clinking of glasses punctuated the room, yet the echo of gunfire still reverberated through Maria's mind. She stood by the archway, an island amidst the chaos. The air hummed with tension, a symphony of deceptive calm overlaying the discord beneath. Sorcia, dressed smartly in royal blue, paced the length of the crowded ballroom. "Have you heard? The Giordano family is grumbling about the recent visitations," she intoned to Maria, her voice a careful whisper amidst the swelling chatter. Maria nodded, but her thoughts flitted back to the gunshot. It had been hushed up too well, like a secret pressed between the pages of a closed book. Amid the grand masquerade of lights and laughter, the truth played hide-and-seek, always just out of reach. The room was a vibrant tapestry of silk and suits, the scent of honeyed pastries mingling with rich cologne. In the far corner, amidst the kaleidoscope of society's elite, Antonio's presence loomed, shadowed sentinel blending into the ambient wealth of the gathering. His eyes found hers across the room, a brief yet potent connection that fortified her resolve. Every step Maria took carried an undertone of graceful poise, a subconscious dance interweaving rebellion and duty, illuminated under the glow of ornate chandeliers. The jewelry she wore, particularly the jade bracelet, a symbol of ties that choked as much as they adorned, served as a constant reminder of the world's expectations pressing down on her. The ripple of scandalous rumor felt like an undercurrent beneath the polished surface of propriety, poised to drag unsuspecting mermaid souls into the depths of despair. There was movement in the room's hierarchy, her own position ever precarious. The crescendo of whispered planning was unnaturally loud in her ears. Maria's brother Leonardo strode toward her with a purpose that set the room's energy awry. Lately, his machinations smoothed the pathway of her fate, and it made bile rise, unwittingly bitter, in the back of her throat. "You've spoken with father?" His inquiry bore the distinct texture of demand, more an expectation than a question. Her borrowed smile was a fleeting comment. Yes, reassurance was the order of the day. Maria shifted her glance to veiled reflections that betrayed myths more intricate than the gab around them. His features tightened, a reaction fired from the forge of frustration and concern. Be cautious, Maria. There are forces beneath the elegance that aim to reshuffle the game. Another nod. The unraveling scenario swirled through her mind, a play of shadow puppets behind a thin curtain of smoke. She could see it all, the unassumed darkness curling beneath the bright veneer. And in that admixture, possibility lay hidden. The benevolent queen, Aiden called from behind, his words dripping with sardonic mirth. He circled her like a jaguar assessing its prey, the feline grace disguising the ferocity lurking beneath, careful not to get consumed by the masquerade. As enigmatic as always, Aiden's presence was a needle against the plush velvet of her life. Or to see you caught in its snares, she parried smoothly, a honed edge to her voice. Their verbal skirmish, a dance of deaf dodgers in the moonlight, intrigued the room, but Maria's mind wandered elsewhere, to Antonio's presence like a comforting specter shadowing her curiosity's thirsty appetite. Hours wore on amidst dances and declamations, Carlo's toast rising over the opalescent sea of shifting alliances. In the soft glow of candelabras, glasses clinked, their symphonic clatter almost a metaphor for broken promises. The night deepened, pressing closer with its cloak of decisions yet to unfold. Maria withdrew to the balcony, her refuge under night's tranquil cloth, where spectators became silent stars. Antonio followed, his arrival more felt than heard. She turned, meeting eyes that spoke truths neither dared voice outright. "Do you think they suspect?" she asked, words carried lightly on the muted murmur of cityscapes dancing beyond the terrace. He leaned against the balustrade, his stature reflected in the inky surface of the garden pond below. "They have their eyes on everyone but see nothing. We stay the course." Her sigh was both a release and a preparation. Her heart played an echo of her anticipation, synchronous with the distant city life harmonizing nocturnally. A breeze tugged at the sleeves of her dress, a hint of the unpredictability lying in wait. Below, the gardens spoke in hushed tones, foliage whispering secrets under lamplight. "I trust your intuition, Maria," Antonio declared, a singular confidence threaded through vulnerability he only shared with her. Maria smiled, a soft crescent illuminated under the cosmic truce. "It's learned from you," she admitted, a promise wrapped in her whisper, a tapestry binding past lessons to future unwritten. But beneath their exchange, the persistent hum of fate unfurled its cryptic notes, life's symphony ardently denying an encore, yet insisting on continuity. As they turned to re-enter the room bathed with false security, Maria hesitated. Her gaze dipped to the glinting garden statue, its shadow cast long in the moonlight, an enigmatic dance partner to her uncertain steps. "This never ends, does it?" she mused aloud, the weight of legacy undeniable, and yet hoped against hope. Silence met her question like a lover wooed by melancholy, a companion to guilt, a brother to perseverance, the soundless testimony of lives woven thickly with silken destinies. Each breath spun into nerves taut with dilemmas, foreshadowed in secrets grave, her obligation beneath the decadent night. The grandfather clock's tick marked an audial journey, commencing from within and ending in another dimensionary pause. Maria envisioned a vignette of faith and heart-locked selves, intrepid now in the face of phantom treason without. But twilight had its ways of concealing its wisdoms, and as Maria's reflection across the glass mirage stared back, warmed by the solitude of her discovery, the carousel of burdens and beauty she bore looped endlessly in the carousel of oscillating arches. Without a closing word, Antonio slipped back inside just before she noticed a shadow beyond the garden wall, a subtle shift, not menacing, yet dexterously suggestive. And so she paused, element struck in the obfuscating silence. The moon's glint of the distant water whispered in leagues unbayed. The voice floated across her consciousness. "What else lies beyond the shadowed rose bushes?" Maria voiced, a fragment of the ether itself, knowing the night held answers not yet ripened in this garden of whispers. The rain was relentless, drumming against the cobblestones like a symphony played out of tune. Maria gazed out of the car window, the lights of the city blurring into an impressionist canvas of bright smudges and shadowed streaks. How fitting, she thought, for a night where decisions lay heavily like wet coats upon the shoulders of fate. Inside the sleek confines of the black sedan, anxiety crackled like static in the air, amplified by the rhythmic beat of Raina Harbinger of the evening's uncertain dance. Maria's fingers traced the outline of her jade bracelet absent-mindedly, its cool touch a tangible relic of her heritage and the binding ties of generations past. Antonio sat beside her, his presence a silent beacon amidst the storm. Even in the cab's darkened interior, his gaze was sharp, watching the world pass by under the veil of rain, with a composure honed by years amid shadows. "You have every reason to be apprehensive," he finally spoke, the words measured yet carrying the weight of unspoken plans. Maria turned to him, meeting the stormy depths of his eyes. "And what of you? Do you ever feel it? The tangle of duty that tries to choke us?" His lips curved into a ghost of a smile, a reflection of their shared burden. "Every day is a negotiation," he replied, his gaze never wavering. They drove through the winding streets, the towering slabs of the cityscape standing sentinel against their passage. Each turn, each swerve, seemed to echo the twists and turns of the life Maria had been thrust into. A life as unpredictable as the dance of headlights cutting through the night. The sedan slowed, pulling up to a nondescript door tucked away in an alley that seemed to shy away from the world. Its anonymity was calculated, much like the lives led by those who stepped through its threshold, a meeting place drenched in secrets and promises, whispered under the cloak of discretion. As they stepped out, the scent of damp pavement mingled with the rich aroma of the city's pulse, and Maria pulled her shawl tighter around her, a gesture of reluctant acceptance. Inside, the room was alive with a subdued tension, the sort that cracks along unseen seams. The high ceilinged space was lit by scattered pendant lights, casting pools of amber that flickered over figures deep in conversation, their silhouettes painted against the dim backdrop. Maria recognized faces, some allies, some adversaries, all players in an ongoing game she was only beginning to understand. Her heart beat a steady rhythm, a cadence of resolve amidst a sea of uncertainty. Leo's voice cut through the murmurs, his presence as commanding as ever. "Maria, join us. We have much to discuss." He gestured to a seat, indicating her place in this council of clandestine decisions. She slid into the chair, the cold wood pressing against her spine like an unwelcome reminder of what was at stake. Around the table, eyes regarded her with varying degrees of scrutiny. In this world of shadows and silent agreements, one learned to wear faces like masks tailored for survival. The meeting progressed, words exchanged in careful trades, veiled and precise. The pressure was palpable, a smudge of fear amidst the polished veneer of control. But it was Sorcia's whispered mention of the agreement that ignited a spark of intrigue within Maria, a topic shrouded in secrecy, a key perhaps to unraveling the weave of power that held them all. Maria's mind whirred with possibilities, tendrils of curiosity threading through her thoughts. "This agreement," she dared to interject, a delicate line of inquiry masked as innocence. "It seems to hold significant weight. What more can you share?" The room seemed to breathe collectively, a tide swelling under the gravity of her words. Maria watched as murmured considerations passed between faces, some betraying flickers of hesitation. Antonio's steady gaze met hers across the table, a silent testament to the trust they had painstakingly built. "Patience, Maria," he cautioned gently, his voice a caress of wisdom. "Some truths are not yet ripe for plucking." Yet, as the tide of conversation shifted, enveloping deeper into realms of strategy and alliance, Maria felt the inexplicable pull of something concealed just beyond her reach, a door slightly ajar in the corridors of power, its creak barely discernible above the clamor of decisions. As the meeting wended to a close, Maria lingered, her heart a roiling sea of anticipation and intent. Allies dispersed, yet tension lingered in the room like aftershocks. Antonio approached, a beacon in the dimming light. "Walk with me," he suggested, an invitation that held myriad meanings. Outside, the rain had ceased, replaced by the crisp promise of a clearer night. The stars scattered across the sky were distant specks of silver, timeless witnesses to the unfolding drama. Even with the chill of night, Maria felt the warmth of resolve spreading through her limbs, a steady ember fueled by possibility. "I need to know more," she admitted, her voice barely louder than the whisper of the breeze. Antonio paused, considering her with a depth that suggested secrets yet unspoken. "Knowledge is a sword, Maria. Wield it wisely." Their steps resounded on storied cobblestones, a quiet symphony punctuated by the tap of her heeled boots, a rhythm, both ancient and new, much like the path she was forging amidst the labyrinth of legacy. In the muted glow of street lamps, something shifted, a movement caught at the edge of her vision, subtle yet deliberate. Maria's senses heightened, a dance of awareness rippling through her as she caught Antonio's eye. His composed nod confirmed her suspicion. "We are not alone," he acknowledged, the undercurrent of his words a silken thread of caution. Together they pivoted, their motions synchronized like seasoned dancers of a clandestine waltz. Awareness spread, sharpening the echo of the night air. In that pause of breath between heartbeats, the specter of danger materialized, transforming shadows into figures cloaked in anonymity. Maria caught the glint of something metallic, a knife, a signal, a challenge. The tension fractured the stillness, casting uncertainty into the night. Gauntlet thrown at the feet of safety. Yet amidst the storm of action rekindled, Maria found her center, an anchor amidst the tempest of inevitable truths. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice a symphony of determination echoing against silent stone. The answer waited beyond the reach of immediate dawn, tucked within folds of impending consequence. And in that moment of pregnant pause, as they faced the faceless, Maria realized sometimes the darkest places held the clearest paths, and it was there, beneath shadow's cloak, that her story would truly begin. As another rumble of thunder claimed the horizon, Maria braced herself, the night pregnant with secrets only patience and courage could unveil. For at the nexus of then and now, teetering on the precipice of revelation, a singular truth lingered, question in the dark. Who will become the queen when even the board is obscured? The whisper of rustling silk, like wind over sand dunes, sliced through the solemn quiet of the assembly room. "Marry the daughter, own the city," the voice declared, each syllable a bullet shattering Maria's fragile illusion of autonomy. She stood beneath the vaulted opulence of Fresco Manor, her reflection a reluctant passenger in the timeless elegance of her surroundings. The grandeur of the polished oak wood shimmering under crystal chandeliers. The tapestries whispering tales of supremacy felt distant and intangible, a domain she merely haunted. Her heart raced against a corseted ribcage, the echo of that phrase haunting her each step toward the inevitable. They saw her as a pawn, a living token in games spun by the maestros of Machiavellian artistry. There, beside the velvet-draped window, Antonio's shadow loomed. His stance communicated calm, but his eye glinted with unvoiced realizations. Those eyes, the color of autumn's secret transformations, held knowledge she barely dared to ponder. A weight settled on Maria's shoulders. Timeless, yet heavy, the burden of being someone's daughter, someone's wife, but desperately wanting to be her own woman. Her fingers tightened around a lacquered fan, a vibrant red resplendent against her pale knuckles. Antonio drew closer, the subtle mingling scent of his cologne and cigar smoke preceding him. "I hope you understand more now than you did yesterday," he said softly, voice of velvet touch polished by resolve. Maria's chin lifted defiantly. "Understanding isn't acceptance," she mused, vulnerability and vehemence threading her words. Her breath caught the soft light, weaving shadows in the air between them. Around them, the room was studiously indifferent, yet she felt the living pulse of unspoken judgment radiating from the corners. Anon, those in attendance drifted through practiced movements, like marionettes, strings pulled by unseen fingers. Pressure intensified, a perennial hum of expectations simmering behind expressions too smooth to betray intent. But she felt it, lurking beneath the surface, an iceberg of commitments on collision course. Antonio placed a hand on the small of her back. Grounding gesture amid chaos. The pressure of history pressed, but beneath it, Maria traced silken threads of power, layered in unspoken defiance. Her father's realm, in suspending truth or consequence, held the world at bay. But did he comprehend the woman she was becoming? In the room's sunlit expanse, time splintered into inevitable progression. The scenario planted by her father's design unveiled, unfolding a kaleidoscope of possibilities. Alliances forged in silence, networks built on nods and glances. The crescendo crescendoed, each word stitched into the tapestry of heirlooms and honor, framing futures suggested and assumed. Her father, his very presence punctuated by power, stood commanding the space focused, unshakable. Maria's eyes met his, role and duty struggling against a new understanding, a perspective solidifying into steel fortitude. Within whispers, her internal voice, sprouted from seeds of rebellion, persisted. Would spoken defiance undo them or redefine her? The maestro conducted his orchestra of agreements, yet she saw past the performance, beyond facades shrouded in heritage's shadow. Stakes rose, tension curdled in the air. And then a pause in the performance. Antonio, her steadfast counterpart in this tangled affair, caught her gaze, proffered a subtle nod, the silent symbolism unlocking pent thoughts. Time dipped into quieter waters. A proposition, foreign and daring, unfurled in her mind, bargaining something forbidden, but oh so tempting. It conjured potential anew. Beneath the spectacle, shielded scrutiny and history intoned into whispers, Maria identified the gleam in Antonio's eye, her mirrored reflection of resolve. I have no intention to become a puppet, she stated, ensuring her words thrummed with the note of regal assertion offset by relatable candor. His amusement shimmered in response, eyes aglow in ambiguous confirmation of shared understanding. Shall we rewrite this play, then? Her nod suggested script approval, felt like a peacock teal slicing through the performative tableau. Exploration innovation. Her resistance observed territories administrated with bruised hopes and withheld victories. As Maria opened her mouth to convey her plans, Leo approached a pawn, yet to realize his queen's power. Father grows impatient, sister. Her quiet opposition swallowed the imposition willingly. Father has always assumed patience is not Theo virtue, she replied, flare of eloquence surrounded by simmering heat not as evident. To Antonio, her voice softened a tender ember fanning into visible flame, inflamed by bravery. It's time I chose to invest in my own designs, she declared, intonated like a bell tolling freedom. The orchestral hum of the gathering shifted in tone. It followed like a swarm sensing the wound now exposed, vulnerable in sunlight. Father's attention, a hummingbird dart in motion vicinity, inevitably sought its next bloom, to perch a while until market breeze welded them shut. The room stilled an indrawn breath of collective expectancy. Examining his stance again, Maria realized then what Antonio had discerned all along. Simplicity wrapped enigmatic intentions with gravitas, a revelation flowering in prismatic elegance. For standing beside power endowed clarity, the origin and destination were Maria's to discern. The building crescendo retired to a gentler sonata. If not mistaken, unseen opportunities present themselves often, proclaimed Leo, thoughts encouraged unbound. Maria faced Antonio fully, certain all plans launched held purpose within urgency. The night descended as if the sun winced. We've got much to discuss, Antonio. Her voice, teeming with stirring potentials, matched his. You're ready, then. Again, the flicker not of violence nor disclosure but unity's omens waved unseen swords like stormless clouds, birthed. Exquisite, the layers awaited, peeling back in silent decisions, mulled along territorial precipices. Maria's soul, buoyant, smugly carried its awareness unknown to others, tethered iterations. Reconfiguring, recalculating paths, Antonio murmured, somewhere between solemnness and familiar ease. The refrain of power and possession played its ongoing rhythm. In Marissa, across available view, perception grasped suspended paragraphs returning into meaningful purpose. Its unconditional dialogue resumed walking away, resolved. As she unearthed delicate invitations, architecture faded beyond choreography into purpose-lensed dimensions. Overhead, crystal shimmer yielded light onto unexplored facets within meaningless real. The Empress interned young, listened wholly, and postponed forgery. Their ambitions awaiting permission, unfolding demanded unearthing. For one brief shimmering half-turn, existence synchronized. Luck, accidents harmonized. Patterns triangulated intellectual kinship until tablecloths slipped, stones supper-cooled, cobblestones echographing. From absence emerged engagement, filling forth vintage enterprise assembled unity, posed instinct, emboldened warmth. A final cinematic revelation unfurling alongside Resolve's avenue. Just beyond perception's close, beneath curtain waves late nights sensuously dispensed, fabric shuffled, thoughts accompanied, gleaming unfathomed conclusions wherein heroic stutter within Yet, if she glanced back through a jeweled vista, what might her unbridled odyssey reveal? The finer redress, luminously rich with memory's soft recall, boot to gesture a hand, offering instructions. Yet another fork? The equilibrium trembled slightly. Had she dreamt it? Thus overlooked by the cosmos, revealing hidden treasure while articulating fateful cusp momentum redlined. Did you feel that? The truth lies buried beneath petals and steel, Antonio murmured, eyes locking onto hers as if to impart the harsh consolation of impending revelation. Maria stood at the precipice of her own comprehension within the marbled corridors of the De Silva estate. The grandeur of the manor seemed to close in, hushed under the melancholy weight of secrets. Every space echoed with the unheeded whispers of choices left untrodden, their consequences weaving through family trees dripping with bitter fruit. The delicate lace trim of her gown brushed against her skin, a tactile reminder that her fate was as intricately woven as the fabric she wore. Yet, shrouded in these whispers was her own muted voice, rising now as the orchestra of expectation reached its boisterous fortissimo. Antonio's words spun amidst her thoughts, threads seeking a pattern beyond love, power, or deception. She glanced over her shoulder, encountering the window's reflection that fragmented her image into a kaleidoscope tale. One version fulfilled duty, while the other sought liberation hidden within its shards. Dark curls framed her face, echoing the tempest that brewed within. "That's what they'll never understand, isn't it?" she asked, voice a subterranean murmur. "Every vow made is just a tether disguising itself as promise." Antonio nodded, his silhouette shadowed against the illuminated whispers of chandelier light. A shallow pool of warmth reflected from his whiskey tumbler, where rich amber liquid nestled like captured sunsets. Elsewhere in the manor, voices rose in cadence, a chorus of murmured deals and whispered ambitions leading every step. Her father, Don Giacomo Ferrero, the stalwart guardian of tradition, was hosting a discourse of overlap interests meant to secure prosperity through unity. Maria, borne by her responsibilities yet yearning for unclaimed freedom, felt the weight of many eyes subtly pinning her to her role. Her heart thrummed against her ribcage, a metronome countering Antonio's steady resolve that punctured the air between them. "No one's going to let us forget who we are," he replied, his voice mellow and dense like old soul jazz. The undertow of their shared intimacy was raw yet sweetly enchanting. It was a practice in balance, or was it gamble intertwining logic with quicksilver privacy? Each gesture, each word shared, added to the gravity-defying secrets clawing for existence. Suddenly, the grandfather clock punctuated the air with a metallic certainty, expressing an urgency that neither could deny. Yet Maria felt chains loosening link by link, a latticework of choices unfurling like stained glass illuminated by morning's caress. Their conversation tightened its grip, poignant pause decorously dispersed with tangible understanding. Maria took a deliberate breath, feeling another layer unfurl. "They say power is knowing, not fearing what arrives next." She dared the thought aloud as doubt involuntarily creased her brow. Antonio's eyes met hers over the rim of his glass. "Funny thing, power. It's blind to the passions it can't control." The warning nestled beneath his words rang clarion. "Or the promises it's forced to keep," Maria added, memories darting like swift arrows through their shared awareness. Dinner was set in the main hall, an opulent display reminiscent of Renaissance paintings, with every guest wearing visages stiffened by propriety. The array of dishes, crowned with fragrant truffles and colorful patinade sauces, were offerings at the altar of alliances constructed on bones of old peace treaties. But beneath that vibrant canvas, pressure simmered beneath shiny marble floors, the weight of promises sealed through genteel deceit. Maria halted before entering, observing from the shadowed alcove, caught in stealth's fleeting embrace. Standing unseen, she surveyed the gathering tide. A figure at the far end of the hall caught her attention. Leo, her brother, a map of confidences stitched by familial loyalty bent on control. His movements choreographed to manipulate expectation, deft maneuvering peppered with ambitious smiles. Her father's gaze swept the room, darting between conversations while capturing elusive glints of transformation. Years of ambition intertwined with rigid demeanor interacted beneath the expanse of his graying brow. Then with an emboldened resolve, Maria stepped into the hall, her presence causing ripples across the glossy sheen of societal veneers. They turned toward her, shadows morphing into quiet musings, assessing, awaiting. In her heart, a new rhythm pounded, a symphony gifted by an orchestra unseen. Antonio stepped forward, creating a reverberation as timeless propriety cracked beneath purpose. Near him, a delicate rose, heavy with dew, lay encased in clear glass upon the table, gesture untethered yet profoundly significant. Leo shifted beside their father, his posture revealing a duality forged in subterfuge. "The city's cloak warms us all tonight," Leo proclaimed, though his eyes sought something distant. In that instant, Maria seized the moment, her words weaving through the nocturnal dance as fine as spun gold. But who determines what warmth is shared and what fire ignites within? Antonio's shadow and proximity steadied her resolve. Together they would rewrite the opera, a composition rich with color, beyond monochrome hidden impacts. With only a heartbeat's pause, she catapulted forward, letting spontaneity nurture her revelation. "Our actions tonight send a note thundering through the ages. It's time new threads were sewn into the fabric of legacy." Gasps unfurled through the assemblage, swirling around as a restless tide oscillating between acceptance and rejection. Antonio's sudden laughter, warm as articulated rebellion, sang out into the air, a presage forging intricate dance beyond known boundaries. Maria turned, aligning herself beside him, the clockwork of history receding to allow for the possibility of fresh designs. The music of choice amplified now, where stern silence had sat sentinel. "Do they not wonder," she whispered to Antonio, an amused sunbeam flickering behind her eyes, "where the heart could lead when allowed to roam free?" Together they edged toward the unknown horizon, the interminable feast continuing behind them. But in her clutch lay a symbol, a single unadorned key, the key to her future. And as they stepped away from the resplendent hall, Maria cast a lingering glance at the embellished doors, a reminder of what could no longer be ignored. Yet beyond them, shadows unfurled, reconfiguring into new narratives. "Listen," Antonio murmured quietly, looping her hand through his own, a promise encircled within like an ancient ring. And Maria knew those upcoming starlit steps forward would etch new pathways, beyond confines imposed by old keeps, X's blossoming unexpected treasure. In silence, the night held its breath, waiting for the moon's verdict, silent decree. Then, from a solitary shadowed corner, unyielded by chandelier's light, a voice rose, like an apparition brought to life. Low yet sharply pronounced, a promise sketched across the room's ripples. "They will test what birds dare soar beyond the caged winter." In that instant, 1,000 futures beheld them, horizons filled with vistas unseen. Maria embraced her new dawn, her unbeholden smile mirrored in Antonio's subtly gleaming affirmation. For them, a tomorrow untouched and unblemished, awaited which triumphs only those kindled embers remain. So, as windows flung wide on the starlit infinity, dusk released its sigh, allowing night to ascend anew, grasping at threads left behind eager, waiting for their destined cover. In quiet humility, shrouded in intentions tender, an unseen world awaited. "Are you ready?" Maria asked, her voice resilient as spring. The reply, a slipstream caught in moonbeam's conch. "This is just the beginning." Outside, beyond the manor, moonlight grazed softly upon the elder trees, crafting arabesques across familiar earth, a signal rippling secret oaths. And in the following stillness, a single petal glided unforeseen onto the surface of a silver bowl, a mark symbolic, yet unknown in its startling configuration, leaving ripples reflecting unexplored vistas. There, above everything else, momentarily suspended within celestial repose, awaited the ultimate communion held beyond any daylight allowance, singing delicacies of uncertain resolve. Wind howled through the estate like a discordant symphony, a bitter harbinger of revelations unbidden. Maria stood amidst this cacophony, the shadows around her elongating under the fractured moonlight sneaking between the trellis of wisteria. Against the cold marble of the veranda, the weight of her decisions pressed down like the heaviest iron chain, a silent testament to the price paid for truth. She knew then, with crystalline clarity slicing like a blade through her fog of doubts, that life as she knew it hung precariously at the precipice of transformation. Antonio stood with her, his presence a bastion of assured calm despite the storm's protestations. His coat flared like wings caught in the wind's tender embrace. "You can't live in fear forever," he said, his voice low and decisive, like the soft patter of rain against stained glass. Maria inhaled deep, the scent of rain-soaked earth mingling with the distant memory of jasmine, fragile yet resilient. Her heart drummed a steady cadence, one attuned to the symphony of life reborn from hidden truths. "It's fear that brought clarity," she replied, looking out over the expanse of guarded secrets hidden within the estate's imperious facade. Every corner, every hidden room, bore witness to echoes of blood feuds and whispered power brokering. Her fingers traced the patio's railing, feeling the cold Baitia metaphor for the steel determination now braided into her very soul. Shadows cast by lampposts flickered in angular abstraction across the courtyard, laying bare paths previously obscured. Perhaps, she wondered, all of this was never about survival of one's legacy, but rather the revelation of one's essence, an unvarnished truth pieced together amid the shards of shattered expectations. A distant sound rumbled wheels on gravel, and a fleet of sleek, midnight black cars approached, their presence converging at the manor's entrance, like the gathering of theatrical players called to the crescendo of an opera. Antonio, ever the sentinel, signaled, his expression a tapestry of intent woven with a trust only time could forge. Inside the manor, the main hall transformed, a grand ballroom where power dances masked as insouciant gaiety. Older faces etched with stories worn like armor stood, their glances as revealing as the honeyed whiskey swirling in baccarat crystal glasses. Her father, stalwart among them, wore ambition draped across his shoulders, yet his eyes betrayed curiosity mixed with calculative foresight. Standing by Leo, whose youthful face belied the shrewdness hard-earned in boardroom battles, nothing transpired unseen. "You bring all players together," Leo remarked, his tone mellifluous but edged. "Strength rests not in unity alone," came Maria's reply, her words as sharp as a rapier. Her insightful assertions danced like dust motes caught in the manor's ethereal light, flickering yet undeniable. As the nocturnal pageantry unfolded, Maria moved with the grace of a conductor leading symphonies adorned with clandestine notes. She saw, and more importantly understood, the fuller composition beneath. In attendance, whispers fluttered. Old rivalries rekindled, alliances reshaped in whispered vows thick with velvet undertones. The crescendo built quietly, a sonorous upheaval, vibrating faintly, assimilating purpose into its cadence. Maria, clear-eyed and resolute, began to conduct her own opus amid this orchestrated chaos. The shift in the air told her it was imminent, a moment drawn in tension's breath, poised to release all that had been withheld. And as Antonio approached, a subtle communion passed between them, a symbolism of harmony beyond the overt symphonies being orchestrated around them. Maria knew that to grasp what was within her reach required her to let go of what tethered her, a tapestry of embodiment beyond mortal lore stitched in honor. She felt the crescendo's sweet pull tugging, akin to a siren song rising above the din of fate's tapestry, being rewoven in shadows. "We are more than pawns," Maria declared, her voice resonating through the vaulted room. The weight lifted from one who witnessed beyond surface's mirage, recognizing choices that rippled like revelation's insistent echoes. In the long pause, contemplation ensued, respect dawning like daybreak lighting the slumbering fields of winter. As silence settled comfortingly, Maria had committed hearts to their origin, embracing their fitful acceptance, unmooring uncertain past. Gradually the guests thinned, Fortuity inhaling renewal's scent beneath anticipation's navigated gloom. They will come to test truths. Antonio spoke, his words soft, understanding, resting in strides matched by determination. And I will meet them, Maria replied, firm as granite beneath the whisper of her voice. Together they stood, figures cast against the fresco walls as sentinel shadows bracing for the burgeoning dawn. With conviction and belief stitched into each stride, they took their leave, painting vibrant paths with every step. Now outside, under the open sky thick with stars, they vanished beyond the waves of expectation stilled by new truths discovered. Tonight, commitments forged bright illuminations past tomorrow's birth, igniting violent promises from redemption's cradle. And as the final metaphorical curtain closed on the tableau, a pale ray of moonlight swept gracefully over intertwining pathways, revealing a clear path laid open like promises of mornings untold. Maria's breath melded with night's sigh as she whispered to the stars above, where dreams bore eternal witness. What once was lost has now been found.